welcome everybody to the latest edition of Sportico Live, where we are examining women in sports. And I'll tell you, we have a jam-packed lineup of ballers. Joining me right now is the CEO of Kraft Analytics, Jessica Gelman. Jess, thanks for joining.
Happy to be here. This is a great event you've put on. I love the focus that you have on promoting women, driving real impact in the sports industry.
We're getting some help by our sponsors, of course, helping us make this happen, Facebook and Goldman Sachs. We're streaming on our Facebook page, as a matter of fact, so I hope that's all going well. Jess, you were telling me a story off air, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, and I won't mention names, and you don't have to mention names, but I thought it was really appropriate to what we're doing today. You were speaking to a friend of yours who's a CEO, a female CEO. Take it away. What was the gist of that conversation?
Yeah, no, this is a woman who is the female CEO of a Fortune 50 company and several years older than me. And I was asking her basically, how much better do you need to be as a woman to get to where you are today, leading that kind of an organization? She said, without hesitation, 70% better. And that was, I think important. So the people that you have that are part of this 2 days of events, like there just needs to be a level of excellence in order to get to where they are and be having the impact, because sadly, we are still at the point where we're breaking ceilings for the first time. I mean, less breaking, but there's still a lot more that's going on.
Well, you said 70% better. Let's chat. Let's bring in somebody who's going 110%, who's doing it big time, and that's Dany Garcia. We're talking entertainment. We're talking sports. We're talking fashion. I originally, Dany, was going to sit in on this, but I said, nobody wants to hear from me on this one. I'm going to head to the background, and I'm going to let Jess take over. But I did want to say thanks for joining. What you have created and what you are creating is incredibly impressive. So thanks again for sharing your thoughts with us.
Oh, thanks, Scott. Thanks so much. Good morning, Jess.
Hey, Dany. So, among other things, what is so impressive is the entrepreneurship and vision that you are bringing to bear, obviously more recently in the sports industry, but longstanding experience in Hollywood and entertainment. And then recently with the fashion brand that you just launched this past Monday. So for those of you guys who don't know, Dany is the first woman to have majority ownership in a major US pro league with the XFL. And also, in addition to the Hollywood component, in addition to having your own fashion brand, which we'll talk a little bit about in a second, but also you're a professional bodybuilder. So you know how to take care of yourself so that you can achieve all of that success. Before we get started, I just wanted to note, these are only the things that are public. But during the pandemic, we talked about the XFL, which you acquired with Redbird Capital and Dwayne Johnson. And then the launch of GSTQ, which I think maybe was made for me. It's a fashion and lifestyle brand for the chic power dressing with a sportswear component. I think what we all want to know is, what are the unique opportunities that you saw during the pandemic? Because these are major launches to make during a time when the economy is in transition. What did you see with the XFL and with GSTQ that you said this is now the time to do these efforts?
Yes, it's such a great question. And thank you for all that wonderful lead-in. I can't go forward without acknowledging that. And yes, it was made for you, because GSTQ, because being able to be polished to perform, but actually move and perform is a big deal for me. So thank you for that. The pandemic actually was very interesting, besides the enormity of what it is, from a professional point of view and a professional lens. It was a moment where the way I worked became the way everyone worked. So the XFL was something I was actually very passionate about in the second iteration, but wasn't something where the previous owner was inviting individuals in. So it had actually launched, and I was like, I really wanted to be a part of that. That New York Guardians team, I had my eye on. And with the turnover, what happened with the XFL, all of a sudden there was an incredible opportunity for me to go where I had wanted to go. So I actually wanted to have a controlling interest and be a part of that development of that sports league. There was a grittiness, a realism. There wasn't this huge disconnect between the athletes and the fans. There was sort of a new lens on how to bring the experience of football and bring the athletes of football to the fan base. And I thought there was so much more white space there. I think this sort of distancing when you get into professionalized sports and you begin to move athletes away and you begin to sort of stray away from the core of who they are as humans disconnects you. I think there's an incredible opportunity in media that surrounds this incredible sport. So for me, it was a time to be extremely thoughtful and diligent and put together an incredible team to go ahead and acquire this and then have the space to create and envision the way I want this league to move. So I had a tremendous amount of time to do that. And that pause, you couldn't see an opportunity to do the deep dive that we've been doing with the XFL without a dramatic pause. I mean, it's about get the players on the field, get that media deal, get moving, etc. And this in particular, the sport in particular, I felt needed a reimagining in how it connected. So the pandemic let me do that. For GSDQ, for the fashion line, literally, that was an idea that I had when I was 16 years old, right? So GSTQ is it took me decades to actually get it. But again, that space and time allowed me to fine tune not only just the offering, but I had a commitment that I wanted to drop a universe. I didn't want the transaction to be, whether it was this piece, which is one of my pieces, or just a track pan, etc., and then we're done. I wanted the mindset that GSTQ represented to me to actually live in the brand. And so, as you know, I do movies, I do franchises. So the universe building out and the amount of detail that takes is something I'm very comfortable with. The pandemic allowed me again to have the space to do it the way I wanted to. And then also the appropriate time to actually introduce an idea like this, because we had, obviously, the world went through something tumultuous. How was I going to earn the right to have this clothing line be there, take your attention, and enter your world? And the pandemic allowed me to do that as well.
Well, I love that. I mean, such disparate parts of the world, but somehow you're connecting them. And that's actually with the XFL, you talked about reimagining it. So I am just mostly interested, how are you taking the entertainment and how you've created these incredible brands and synergies, and how are you thinking about applying that to the XFL to ensure that it's a good investment for you and your team?
It's a great question. So the success, if you look at my resume, you look at the success, you're going to see that there's a very fundamental principle, which is from the beginning, I accept the responsibility and I embrace the responsibility of who is on the other side of the transaction. Who's on the other side of the media? Who's on the other side of the terror monitoring? Who's on the other side of whatever I'm creating? And their interests and experience is paramount to me. Equally as important are all the individuals who are involved in that execution. So for the XFL, the athletes, just like in film, and obviously I have a management, in addition to production, I've also managed talent. I know what it means to look at what I call human sustainability, utilizing an individual who's an IP, who is the center, and how are you ensuring that their life has sustainability, their emotional output, their state has sustainability? Because in the end, that is a complete picture that creates a better experience for everyone involved. So when I was looking at the XFL, or sports in particular, you never see that type of point of view. So initially, I knew I had a point of view on how to enter this experience that would be radically different. So if you begin with that point of view, and then you begin to say, okay, what are the extensions now of a game that the world loves? That is such a part of our history, moments that have shaped and created psychology. What are the how am I taking that experience and now translating it to the consumer today and how they want to experience things? Again, you go back to the fact that before I'm moving with my consumer next to me, keeping an eye, saying, okay, what is the experience you want to have? And how can I then take this beloved IP and begin to put it in places it hasn't been before, but then also begin to tell the story in ways people haven't seen, right? So, sports, as we know, right, women in sports, we know that there's a point of view in storytelling that has existed for decades and decades and decades and excludes individuals, takes into account and says, well, the world looks at life in this way. Well, that is no longer, that is a limiting aspect. So if I already know I've developed a point of view that encompasses as much diversity and a global point of view, I want to bring that storytelling to the products or the teams or the anything that I invest in, and then allow that to move out. Now you have multiple point of views. You can go in different places, including whether it's gaming, how is it showing up on your phone, how's it showing up anywhere, who are the new partnerships, where is there innovation, because the lens I'm using is much wider and more complex. So, these are all philosophical conversations that we're having, but you begin to take that philosophical point of view and you can actually break it down into the revenue streams. And it's that ability. If I didn't have that ability and my partners didn't have that same ability or didn't believe in my ability to do that, then you're looking at a financial model that's basically duplicating what's been before. Why would we do that, right? So that's, leaning into that, making sure I'm finding partnership that supports and agrees with that and can actually execute on the vision is where you begin to see this profitability in 3 to 5 and 10 years. I mean, you can literally be in a place where we've never been before.
I think what I heard you say is that you're taking an athlete's first mindset to thinking about the league, and then you're personalizing the consumer experience to the different types of consumers that you have and bringing that forward in a unique way through whatever the different channels are, which I think is phenomenal. And I agree is an area that really doesn't exist. We're starting to see that a little bit on women's sports. Athletes Unlimited, which started this past year, is taking that kind of approach. Right. So for this to be applied, not surprisingly, by a woman to men's sports, no, I think it's really awesome, and I think will be received differently and create a different connection for all of the athletes and the fans too. So to that end, because I love that it is a very unique approach, is there anything that you've learned through the XFL process, that everything that you've been undergoing, that you're applying to any of your other ventures, of which there are many? You invest in a lot of different businesses, you start businesses, you have talent management. I think you've probably cloned yourself at least three times at this point in time. But is there anything that you're applying or learning from the XFL to your other areas of interest?
I would say absolutely. I would say the XFL experience is really where I'm able to pull more and sort of sprinkle back. Usually because the execution, the product on field and the experience that the fans will have, et cetera, is driven by the past, right? A lot of my work already. So it's going to, but the way the XFL, the development that we have around it, my partners around the table who sit with me around the table, the Redbird side, the BCG, Wasserman, these individuals who are sitting there have been an invaluable experience of showing me where my expertise can be duplicated so that I can go do something else. So what I've actually learned, this project is so enormous. And unlike film, which you're building out a film universe, you're still in the industry of film. So a lot of everything is intertwined. And so there's synergies there. The XFL and the scope of what we do is so broad that you have to create systems to bring in subject matters that are literally 10 miles apart. And so the process and that structure of how we're doing it has been an incredible case study. I mean, when we get to a launch point and we get to look back, I really look forward to speaking about that a little bit more openly. It's live and there's a lot of confidential information we have. But I've, understanding that there are individuals who can come in and take a space that I usually have had to sit and manage, and so I can continue to move up. Because with the XFL, as with any project, there is so much I don't know. I think there's a little bit of misperception that I always go into something and, oh my gosh, I'm bringing everything forward. It's actually not true. I bring about 20% forward and 80% is brand new. So what I'm very good at is being comfortable with brand new and knowing that my ability to figure out is actually what I always want to invest in. Not so much that I have the answer at the moment. It's getting to it. So the XFL has given me, it's made me go back to all of my other projects and say, okay, how can I add more scope and depth underneath and bring in new team members so I can continue to elevate?
I mean, first of all, your humbleness is not lost on me. I don't know if you follow Adam Grant, but he just came out with a new book called Think Again. And it sounds like he's probably going to have a case study on you pretty soon because you seem to really be doing that. I want to just for the audience, go back to kind of how you learned and your start. So you're self-made, which is really inspiring from an entrepreneurial perspective, as an entrepreneur myself. But, you started out at Merrill Lynch right out of college. Then you founded your own firm, GDM Partners. You then accelerated with Seven Bucks production. And for those of you who are watching, the probably most notable film is Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, as well as producing and developing the series on HBO, Ballers and Rockin' a Hard Place. So, I mean, just constantly learning, constantly evolving, but really self-made. How did you learn and educate yourself about business, and which entrepreneurs have you looked at to take inspiration?
I'm so glad you asked that question. It's one of the most difficult questions for me. So I actually spent a little time on this because I have to go back and say, the uniqueness of my career goes back to a woman and a young person who was a duck out of water most of her life. So I have a very unique point of view on how see how things can be executed. So I was extremely lucky that, my family immigrated from Cuba when they were very young. And so I'm first generation here. So I didn't have access or even sort of an idea or even mentorship opportunities where I was seeing CEOs and leadership. But I did go to work when I was 12 years old. And at a barn, I ran an 8-stall barn so I could keep my horse and drove big tractors and broke every child labor law. But I started working at 12. And then in 15, 16, I worked and sold men's suits with a gentleman who owned his own suit business. And I have been working ever since. So after that, I was very fortunate at the University of Miami to work at the executive education department in the School of Business with the dean's office. And that, setting up executive education, that's when I first saw CEOs. And I was like, whoa. And I knew I was going to do international business. I knew I was doing international marketing finance. I knew that by 16. So I was at the university, but I had no concept to the infrastructure of what these major companies. So I remember I didn't go from my eye on, moving internally and sort of working this process. The individuals who made impact were great CEOs who came to speak. So there was a CEO of Coca-Cola, the CEO of Quaker Oats, major global CEOs. And so that's where my mind went to. So I always had this gap of where I was paying attention. So what has happened is over time, the areas that I would call the white space is where my eyes would always go to. And that became my inspiration. And so, I would see a space where if you look at Dwayne Johnson's career and the build out and the infrastructure, no one had ever built out infrastructure around an individual in that way. So it was seeing the white space, being extremely passionate about it, and then bringing team members in. So my team members they would inspire me. They would be so brilliant that I would then get inspiration for what was around me. So it was first, but it was always the first thing of where I wanted to be or what I thought was the next step. And then that second step of who was with me became a self-fulfilling it was kind of an inspirational think tank that would just continue and continue as we got closer and closer and closer to the goal. So I guess I'm very fortunate to say the people who sit with me are my greatest inspiration.
And Dany, Jess and I are very similar. I'm sitting here taking notes as well, Jess. I think we're very similar that way.
Taking notes.
We do have to move on. We could go all day. I mean that. We really could. But you did say something I scribbled down quickly, and I wanted to know if you were speaking literally. The way I worked is the way everyone worked. Now, are we talking about people at home who are wearing sweatpants, with the dress shirt? Because maybe your line is for me as well.
Yes, no, I literally have sweatpants underneath this, so I think that's important that we should notice that. What I mean is people would take 10 meetings. I will take one. everyone will be running around, let's get drinks, let's do this. No, let's not. Let me sit and let me philosophize and let me think. Let me have moments of great intention and focus. And that's what happened. It's because we moved into a Zoom environment. There was a number of different distractions. I could have everyone as focused as I was, looking at one project and wearing sweatpants, so they were very comfortable. So the whole clothing thing went away. We weren't in heels either. Again, very comfortable, super creative.
Right. All right. Well, our focus now has to go on to Kristen and the other panel. But Dany, thank you so much. Jess,
thank you
as
so
always,
much.
thank you.